All right, let me just check my volumes here. Okay, so welcome to another video where I do stuff in Photoshop and narrate it, and hopefully I get you to kind of pick up on some of my methods. Full disclaimer, methods that I'm going to be using here are pretty much methods that I've developed over my, at this point, surprisingly long career as a comic artist and an illustrator and a designer. And given the fact that I'm self-taught, these methods have kind of been the integral part of my workflow for years now. You will notice that I am working on an older version of Photoshop. That's because pretty much ever since this one, I've never had anything added to Photoshop that merited me just upgrading, even though I do own a newer version. This one's just reliable. So I'm working on the Photoshop CS3. There are some differences between this Photoshop and the newer ones, and I will make a point of those once I get into brush creation and certain elements. For today's work, I was thinking I'm gonna make a quick painting demonstration of Mera from Aquaman. Now, the reason why I'm doing that is not because I want to create some crazy illustration. None of these videos are gonna be me, giving it my all to make a crazy cool painting. They're more, they're more of a way of me effectively depicting the methods and explaining them as we go. So let me just crop this thing to something that works for me. I'm gonna. Now, the purpose of today's video is gonna be to show you some interesting ways, interesting things you can do with brushes for, texturing outfits and doing some crazy stuff. But most importantly, it's going to be to display and explain my method of doing some very quick and effective kind of water bending effects, which you can then use for a lot of stuff. It is a method that's applicable for a lot of different things. Now, layer, new layer. All right. And let's get it started. I'm gonna just quickly block it out. Now, this part, unfortunately, is not a teachable thing. For a while now, I've been doing a method where I'm just kind of feeling things out and not really sketching or doing a preliminary sketch or a drawing. This method has done wonders for my moment-to-moment artistic decision making. So it's effective. Like right now, I can immediately understand what I need for my overall silhouettes, my forms, and everything. So I can really quickly lay down shapes, volumes, everything really, color, and it is a method that's advanced. It's for people who are already in an advanced stage of their training. Um, what it does is it helps you draw with feeling. This is one of those reasons why when people ask me, it's like, can you know, tell me how you do it? It's like I can't really teach you how to draw because right now, yeah, first of all, I'm self-taught, so I've never had an experience of somebody giving me the teaching method because the teaching method is very much unnecessary thing that enables you to kind of you know to know how to transfer your knowledge really. Like that's kind of something I really do suck at. Well, not suck at, but problem with me is my entire workflow has always been workflow of somebody who's been training through their own errors, through their own mistakes. So pretty much everything I do is just kind of me building on stuff that I've done wrong before and I'm improving on now. With that in mind, this whole process right now is is a result of about 15-20 years of just constant drawing on the 8+ hours a day. So I don't really need to consider my pieces anymore that much, and especially since I've embraced this method of work recently to train myself even further, you know, my abilities have further evolved to a point where I'm getting a better and better feeling for those things. Now, if you consider yourself at some decent level where you can comfortably draw, people, I I do recommend this method. Not for you to make any memorable illustrations or something crazy good, but for you to train your instinct. Because through this thing, this process will do wonders for your ability to comprehend and draw body language, gestures, momentum, movement, all those things. Um, it it really is a matter of you kind of practicing to feel the force of your drawing. Now, again, never take anything that I say here, as the gospel truth. Like, I'm just telling you things how I've learned to interpret them for myself over time. Like I said, I wasn't trained in this, so it is very much it is very much me just kind of trying to make sense of a very chaotic process that I've gone through over years, over the course of years. Uh, uh, while I'm doing this, I might as well give you some pointers, some tips, maybe for practice. As you notice, I'm very quick at picking my colors. Kind of making quick decisions with them. A lot of that has been helped by me at some point in my past doing photo color checking, where I would take a photo, of especially with skin tones. I would take a photo and I would just start color picking, just so that I could kind of get a general idea while I'm color picking. Let's say I color pick, let's yeah, um, just to see where on this line and where around this area that color is located. Um, I would do this for a few weeks. I'll take every day some time to kind of just color pick, just kind of get an idea of where the colors are, so that I can very quickly just kind of reach and grab them and just move on. Once again, for everybody for whom this is my first video, I do apologize for the vocal tics. I do have a case of Tourette's, and that went undiagnosed for a long time, and I thought it was some sort of an allergy. Turns out, oopsie. So yeah, for the inevitable questions of what are those noises, that's what those noises are. Going back to this, same method also works. Color picking training also will work wonders for you when you're trying to draw materials. Not because you know you necessarily want to copy colors, but because you kind of want to get an idea of which colors you will meet on those kinds of materials. Also, with reflective materials, you always want to keep in mind, that they are reflective. They are actually actively reflecting colors that are, in the environment. So, drawing a metal crown, you got to keep that in mind. At one of the later videos, I'm gonna spend some time with something more reflective, just kind of to, maybe explain some of the logic of reflections and some tips and tricks that you can use to achieve some effective reflections. Like I said, another thing that I will always try to remind you is um, always make sure to look for multiple tutorials. We do live in a wonderful age where you can actually access all the knowledge on your own. You don't need no art schools to get yourself to get good at this. What you do need is the drive, the fire inside of you, the willpower to actually you know, do this and stick with it. And so nowadays you really do have a lot of options. Like there's so many great tutorials on all of this stuff. Hell, there's a lot of tutorials that cover pretty much the stuff that I do in one way or another. I'm mostly trying to explain it for those of you who've been wondering how I do it. Well, yeah, this is to my best knowledge, my attempt to my best ability to explain to you the uh, my workflow and my methods, and hopefully you pick up something that's useful to you. And I do mean something that's useful to you and not, well, he does it, so that's how it's supposed to be done. By no means, no. Always make sure to research this stuff. Like if you're learning this stuff, look around. There's, like I said, a ton of tutorials everywhere. Hell, you'll probably find people who will explain it way better than I can. Uh, you know, you're living at a time where teachers are everywhere. You just have to be willing to do the learning. All right. Considering I want her to be using her magic, there's going to be some illumination from each of her hands, which is going to give me some nice form separations. All right. Also, you'll notice me using a very limited amount of layers generally in my work. This is because I do come from a background in traditional painting. So, in traditional painting, you only have one layer. And then you just keep painting over that and pray to heavens above that you don't fuck it up, because then, well, then you thank the heavens above for existence of acrylic, because that thing will cover anything. Multiply. Now, people often ask me about, creating some tutorials about faces, facial expressions. Problem with that is it's the nature of style. Um, those are very scary things to make a tutorial about, because these things are a result also, a lot of the impact of my work's expressiveness comes from my own approach to style. Um, in order for you to fully understand the problem with this, you got to understand what the style is. Style, when naturally developed, is your artistic handwriting. It is your shorthand for depicting form, for solving visual problems. Um, that's, you know, inherently imperfect. Um, I've always equated style to artistic handwriting, and for a very good reason. When you get into when you start learning how to write, one of the first thing that you're gonna learn is gonna be to write letters properly. You're gonna construct them properly. Um, they're gonna be you know they're gonna be textbook kind of letters. But the more you do them in life, the more you're gonna start writing faster. You're gonna start writing more carelessly. You're gonna start also writing more intentionally. And through that, through repetition, through speed, you're gonna start affecting the form of those letters. You're gonna start, making them curve in very specific ways that are very unique to you, because you you're left-handed, you're right-handed, you're shaky-handed. Point is, you're gonna distort those letters. Now, how does that relate to artwork? Well, simple. Um, there's, you know, the right way of drawing a person. If we're gonna go with, just pure um, quality of the picture, there's hyperrealism. That's using references. That's, yeah, you're always gonna nail it that way. And then there is the style. Style through art, for comics and stuff like that. It occurs when you start, learning your basic construction of characters. You're gonna start applying that. You're gonna start kind of landing your basic proportions. Things are gonna start looking better and better. You're gonna start kind of figuring out how to draw a person. The problem is, um, through time, you're gonna apply more and more of your own shorthand. You're gonna simplify things. You're gonna distort things left, right, and center. Like all of a sudden, those people that you're drawing are gonna become recognizably your people. Duplicate layer, layer, merge down, liquify, and as they become your people, um, they're no longer real people. They are symbols for people. They become symbols for reality. Uh, at the very at the at most, it's gonna be some sort of an approximation. Um, so how does that relate to? Oh fuck! Did I just flatten it? Yes, I did. Step backward, step backward, step backward, and step backward, and step backward. Layer, merge down. All right. So how does that relate to me teaching people, expressions? Well, here's the thing. Every time I draw expressions, I mentally pick a moment in which I'm gonna freeze my character, mid-sentence, mid-movement, and the it's always going to be a relatively intense movement. It's always going to be a movement that best depicts that moment. Um, and then I'm going to apply a bit more contrast to that movement. I'm going to apply a bit more contrast to that, um, you know, uh, moment, to that movement, to all of to the whole thing, by exaggerating things in my own way. This is how it is through these exaggerations that you're gonna also find that you recognize an artist's style. We all have our own way of exaggerating things. We all have our own quick method of dealing with the problems of, how do you depict a person? How do you depict a thing? And when dealing with that, I have my own ways of doing it. And sure, I can teach you my own way of doing it, but here's the problem. With that lesson, let's say I teach you how to make an expression, you know, what you're also going to be absorbing is you're going to be absorbing my flaws, my own mistakes, my own distortions of the thing. And you're learning from something that's already inherently distorted. And then what's going to happen is you're going to apply your own layer of distortions on top. Now, keep in mind, my distortions are calculated. They are a result, of course, of practice. So as they're calculated, they still look good, you know. But let's say you haven't had that much practice, and you're trying to, you're trying to mimic my style, my approach, and but while doing it, it's like trying to mimic somebody else's handwriting. Your own handwriting is gonna bleed through it, and all of a sudden the result is going to start looking worse and worse and worse. And I know that because I went through that. I'm not just saying this because, oh no, people can't, copy my style. Of course they can. Everybody can copy a style. Hell, my entire college days were spent doing nothing but copying other people's style. And unfortunately, other people's styles have pretty much poisoned me for the longest time, where I couldn't find my own way of expressing it. Like things never looked quite right because I was trying to write with somebody else's handwriting. So my best method ended up being going back to the roots of it all and learning, from photos, learning from uh, just watching movies and trying to pick up, expressions and movements and everything like that. And I built from that. Now, as for how do you get expressions? Well, it's very simple, really. I mean, everybody knows the answer. It's just, it's not a terribly exciting answer. What you do is you take a phone, because to quote Blizzard, y'all have phones, right? Um, so you take a phone, you take a bunch of selfies of yourself making all kinds of expressions, and you practice from that. You take stills from movies of people making expressions, and you practice from that. And then there is one exercise that I could advise you to try. You take photos of yourself making a bunch of photos. Sorry, a bunch of expressions. Sorry, creation brain. I'm translating as I'm fucking drawing. So you take photos of yourself making a bunch of expressions, and then what you do is you line them up in a single file, and then you go through lines. You go through basically one line. You're gonna take every one of those expressions and you're gonna apply them to a male character. Then you're gonna take every one of those expressions and then you're gonna apply them to a female character. And then you take every one of those expressions and you're gonna apply them to a monster slash anthro slash whatever you want. And then you're gonna take all of those expressions and then you're gonna apply them to a geometric form, such as a cube or something. And basically, you train your way until you start understanding the logic of expressions. Another thing I would very much recommend while doing that is find yourself some references of the anatomy of the face, so that while you're drawing it, uh, everything that you see on an expression, look it up on the anatomy of a face, so musculature and everything like that, and see how it correlates, just so that you gain a deeper understanding of what's happening there. Now, I know for some of you who are not familiar with my work, me telling you all this big shit about expressions, and you have this expressionless face of just kind of like, ooh, what's there? I know it's not terribly exciting, but then again, that's not really the point of today's drawing. We will get to some expression work and some more specific tips and tricks and tutorials about that. But I just have to find the best way to formulate my words on that. Even right now as I'm talking, this is just kind of me filling the air because I don't want to put random music into this because who knows, maybe one day I want to do this YouTube thing a bit more active, and I'd rather not kind of have my whole shit be demonetized immediately, even though my potty mouth is going to do that very well on its own. Anyways, uh, bu- 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 also one of those basic level lessons for people when painting. Lessons. Take it as an advice. Try and work your way from large shapes to small shapes. Don't don't dive into the picture immediately. Let yourself see the forms better from a distance. So always start with a large brush and go towards smaller. This is strangely enough the same advice that works for writing as well. Start with big ideas and then separate it to smaller chapters, separate it to smaller events. I guess there's a pattern to creating things. For those of you who haven't seen previous videos of mine, right now I am using a very old blending brush of mine. How old? Over 15 years now. This was done back in the earliest days of my Photoshop work. And I discovered it by sheer coincidence because during my first attempt at doing digital coloring, I thought like I've learned some stuff through in Photoshop. Here's the thing. My knowledge of Photoshop is absolutely self-taught, as in I would see a thing and then I would just kind of poke at it and see what it does, which is why a lot of my methods are so kind of off the beaten path. I've learned to think through different approaches to these programs, so you know my methods tend to be a little bit weird, but they do tend to be effective at times. All right. That feeling when you started making a thing that's just there for a quick demonstration, but you're low key thinking to yourself like, this is actually quite good looking. All right. Still, I'm not gonna overkill this thing with details because, well, I made this video for a reason. Let's do some subsurface intense scattering because she's using some serious water magic there, so that light is gonna bleed through her fingers big time. This is not perhaps the most physically correct amount of subsurface scattering, but that's the awesome part about illustrations and about comics and about doing crazy creative shit. You can make things the way you want them to be. All right. Now I am going to, let's see, first I'm gonna make some brushes now. Right now I'm gonna make a bit of a kind of a scaling brush for her outfit and crop it, dumbass. There we go. Now for a scaly brush, I tend to do a very simple thing. Layer, new layer. All right. Layer, center. Where is it? Align layers to vertical center and layer. Align layers to horizontal center. There we go. So for the scale brush on mirror, what I want to do is, let's see, about here and about here and about here and about here. Okay. I want to soften it a little bit. And then I want to filter, blur it a little bit also, because I don't want this thing to be overly sharp. And I could give these scales a little bit of a, just a little bit of kind of an angular depth. So I can just now, like I said in my yesterday's video, when making a brush, when making a plant brush, you really kind of want to know how to control your dark levels and light levels, because anything that's dark, that's gonna be the areas that actually transfer your color. That's gonna be your brush surface. Anything that's white, that's gonna be transparent. So when making these brushes, you want to keep that in mind. One of the future videos, I'm gonna also show how you can get great effects with these methods when making brushes that are specifically made for threshold. No, sorry, not threshold. For stroke layer effect, where you can combine the transparency option of the brush with stroke to actually get a kind of a two-color thing that well, you can get some really good effects with it. It's ideal for like patterns on fabrics and decorative stuff. All right, now let's see how this works. Edit, define brush preset. All right. I think actually I want to do a bit more softening. With these things, more specifically, you define your brush, the better the end result is gonna be. So, and what I'm doing right now is a brush for her outfit. So she's gonna have this kind of a scaly thing going on. All right, now edit. Where are you? Edit, define brush preset. All right. Now what I want to do is go into settings and start assembling this brush. First things first, every brush, like I mentioned yesterday, is made through repetition of the pattern that you made. So, you know, if I just did this, I don't really get anything with this. Let me just do it on this layer. So yeah, like I said, nothing, doesn't really do anything interesting. However, with this thing, you're capable of rotating your brush. Now, in this case, I want to do something like a 40. I want to do a 45 rotation. Shape dynamics. Okay. And I want to do, direction. And now I just want to get myself enough spacing to get a good feeling for it. Now, now you can see roughly what it does. And the reason why the brush actually follows my stroke is that under shape dynamics, I have it set to direction. Sorry, I'm a little bit, wow, I'm a little bit allergic to the pollen in the air as well. This is going to be a great month for me. So I want to set it also to other dynamics. In newer versions of Photoshop, this is going to be called transfer. So these are standard pen pressure control. And another thing that I want to do is I want to apply color dynamics. Now what color dynamics does is it takes these two colors and it keeps shifting between them. So I can put something like this and something like this. Let me see. There we go. And what it's gonna keep doing is, if I just have foreground background jitter, it's just gonna keep purely shifting between these two. But I also added some hue, saturation, and brightness jitter so that it keeps changing up the values of these things so that it gives it a bit of a shimmer. Now, I'm gonna add it a new layer. This thing is best done with an extra layer just because it gives you a bit of control. And let's set this. Let's try soft light for this one. All right, now edit. This is way too large of a sample, so I'm gonna do a smaller one. Now I can see that there's a bit of a dance to it, but I'm not satisfied with just how much of it. So I want to make sure that the contrast is somewhat stronger. giving it that bit of a, iridescence. And of course, considering that I'm doing this on a separate layer, you know, every bit of actual rendering from below, I can easily, just drop down a layer, blend in the forms and everything, get everything done just right if I need to. And I can always add a layer on top for some of my rim lighting and stuff like that. And I can keep adding as many layers really as I want to, but I always try to keep it on a manageable, easy to control amount of layers. So what you doing? Why you? So yeah. Now, like I said, I am trying to keep this video to a manageable length. So instead of just doing some crazy full rendering of this, I have no interest in that right now. So I'm going to just focus on light building and, most importantly, for the effect that I want to show you how it's done. This is where the magic happens, literally. We're going to do layer, new layer, layer style, bevel and emboss. And now we will go crazy. First of all, I always put the depth to 1,000. It gives me the greatest range to work with. And this is going to be for those crazy little water effects that you see me do in comics and in illustrations every now and then. And often people ask me, it's like, oh my God, how long did this take you? And it's usually somewhere around 5 to 10 minutes. And here's why. It all comes down to using your filters and layers smartly. So we're going to work with water. So we don't want our shadow on our bevel filter to be anything that's black. We want something that's kind of, kind of blue-green here. So I'm going to use this, maybe a little bit more to the blue. There we go. White for the screen, for the highlight is fine. Now, gloss contour. Let's say, first of all, let's say, okay, we've set things up for now, because I really want you to see how this works while being made. So let's say I make this, whatever it is. Doesn't really do shit, doesn't really look like water, does it? It's like, oh, what is this? It's a thing. It's sharp and weird and rough. But here's now where the magic happens. What we do, first of all, is we're gonna soften it. We're gonna give it some size. We can soften it even more if we need to. We can also be smart and do it with a softer brush, but for now, let's say we want this. Now, this gloss contour, that's just this one, it gives us a very simple way it shades. However, we use one of these, one of the crazier ones. Now we're getting somewhere. However, we're still not happy with this, and also it's going to change the way you change the illumination. Here's the thing though, when you render in water, like there's always kind of a backlight through it, So how do you achieve that without just manually drawing everything? Because let's say we really don't have the time, and let's say that we're extra fucking lazy. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna set it to drop shadow. And you're like, drop shadow, that's gonna make things darker. But is it though? Because drop shadow comes with options. its default blend mode is multiply. But what if we don't want multiply? What if we want something like normal? So that's going to be like when you set your brush to normal and, all of a sudden it just works normally. Then instead of this, you're going to do something like this, and then, you're going to pick your own thing. Now you do spread so that you have some actual hardness to that edge. You do size backwards, you do just reduce it completely, and then you can do distance to give it some thickness. Now you'll notice what it does here. But let's say we're really fucking crazy and we're like, I want more. Like I'm a Disney princess, okay? I just want more out of this. So we're gonna do some inner glow. We're not gonna use yellow though. It's just why we're trying to make water. We're not trying to make piss. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do one of these, and then we're gonna make it. Let's see. We're gonna make it size. We're gonna give it some of this instead of screen. Let's try some hard light. Now you'll notice how it starts illuminating these um, edges here. That's because it's starting to bleed in this color. In fact, yeah, you can see how it changes, and that's because it's going around the edges of the thing completely. So let's see. So, so choke is how much it narrows towards the center. Size gives it softness. So what you want to do is find yourself a nice balance between the two things. All right. Now, let's say I want it to be actually transparent. Like I want these effects, but I don't want the color itself that I've used to draw, So, and let's say, I'm doing this thing and it's just I don't want this color that I'm using. So I can just remove the fill. And now I'm dealing with just the effect colors. And then when I have clear effect colors, now I can just kind of, I can pretty much make my decisions on the go where I want these colors, how I want them done, how intense do I want them. Okay. Inner shadow, inner glow actually. I can kind of desaturate this a little bit maybe. So now, now we have something akin to what we want. But the cool thing about this is I can also, I can also uh, reduce its effect. I can erase it. I can do some blending to smoothen it where I need it to, kind of transition from one thing into another. And most importantly, I am not limited to just doing this on one layer. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just duplicate the layer. Now, let's say you're really happy with what you got here as far as the effectiveness of it goes. Let's say you're satisfied with it. All right. So this is this is what I want for my future projects. So I can just change some colors around, but this is generally what I want from it. Let's see, maybe I can. There we go. Let's say you like the way this looks as an effect, as your layer set up. Well, then you just do styles and just set it to new style. You can name it or anything, but I'm too lazy to name my styles, so I'm just gonna leave it like this because it's gonna get deleted eventually, anyways, because because I'm gonna forget to save it again. So now Let me just find myself some interesting brushes that I can use it with. I'm just gonna use one of these. It's a very simple brush. It's basically, this shape that you see. Yeah, this shape here, just kind of a thing, and I made it to kind of, yeah, do a thing. So I'm gonna just put. Oh, I used it on a smudge tool. You don't want that. Smudge tool is still very fucking expensive, a very expensive tool, and I still haven't switched the tools. I'm a freaking genius. I've done this before, people. But yeah, smudge tool is it's very computer expensive. Like it's gonna eat up your processing power like crazy, unless you uncheck spacing on a scattered smudge tool. Why? I don't know. But yeah. Now, the cool thing about this brush is it comes with its own little kind of a, flair to it. So I can just kind of, add elements and add layers to it. And now let's say I want to do, where's it? Let's say I want to do some bubbles also. I'm gonna just add it under. I'm gonna duplicate this layer again. And the only reason I'm duplicating it is because I'm too lazy to craft a new layer and then just apply the styling. But I probably should display that. I'll do that for the next layer. But yeah, let's say I want some bubbles. Well, usually I would use my specially drawn bubbles brush. But here's the thing though, because the way this layer is already set up, I don't have to. I can just use a default round brush, give it some spacing, give it some scattering, scatter that thing, give it some size jitter so that it keeps changing sizes. I'm gonna give it minimum that's not completely zero so that it doesn't really annoy me. Scattering, I might do, might increase this, and I'm gonna put it to both axes so that it really scatters those things. Now, because of the way that we already set up the layer, we get these things immediately done. Yeah, let me see. I forgot what inner shadow can do to this. I think I used to do that also. Hard light. Okay. Now, let's say I am remotely happy with what I got here. Okay. I can just let me just hide all of these, and I can just layer merge visible, and now all of these layers are no longer riddled with all the effects and everything. They're just there. Now, if I want to, I can do crazy things. I can actually I can change the way that they interact with the background, so I can set it to hard light so that they kind of better blend with everything. I can do image adjustments. I can do some level work so that I remove some of the most intense shadows out of it. But I can also kind of give it a bit of oomph where I need it to. And yeah, now we have a general idea what I kind of want to be happening here. So from there on, it's just a matter of me building up forms, building up layers and stuff like that. I can do a layer, new layer. I can get some linear light into that so that it really intensely gets some illumination going. Yeah. And then for the background, let's say I want some ZBrush. So file new. Actually, I don't even need a new file. I can just work on the one from before. Yeah, here we go. Edit clear. So what I want from a ZBrush, well, you know those patterns that you see when you see, maritime photography, underwater photos. So that's pretty much what I'm after when I'm making a kind of a brush for the sea itself. I want to do some softer and some harder edges, just kind of to anchor it in. All right, it's it'll serve a purpose for now. So let's see. I want to do edit, define brush preset, shape. First of all, I'm gonna get it align a little bit better. Now under shape, I want it to flip X and Y. Oh right, yeah, I forgot. Oh well, it'll do. I can actually give it some angle. Do I want to do angle? No, no, no. I've approached this badly because I forgot that it's gonna flip it weirdly. So what I want to do, just do this. I'm gonna maybe even erase this, because a small tip for brushes, you kind of want to keep your end edges of your brush matrix either completely empty or just kind of slowly fading into nothingness, just because it helps you connect your brush. So edit, define brush preset, and now I'm gonna set this up. Shape, flip X, flip Y. There we go. Now it's acting the way I want it to act. Size jitter, scattering maybe, we'll see. Okay, scattering a little bit less. There we go. Other. All right. And of course, I did it on the wrong thing that doesn't give me all the options. Excellent. I am a professional. Haha. So redoing shape, removing angle. So flip X, flips Y, flip Y. Space it out, scatter it a little bit. I said a little bit with one. I can do other and maybe a little bit of color. All right. So here's what this brush is going to be used for. First of all, layer. All right, we're on the right layer. I'm gonna actually saturate it and darken it a little. Hue saturation. All right. Then I'm gonna image adjustments. I'm gonna darken it, but through levels, so that I get a bit more contrast. This is giving us some nice lighting, and then you want you want the background darker. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take this color. I'm gonna take me some of this color. Then I'm gonna go to town on this background. But first, let me just double check. I don't think I activated. Yeah, I need me direction. There. All right, so now it's gonna actually follow my strokes, and I'm gonna go with. Let's try hard light. No, let's try overlay. Yeah, that's gonna be it. All right. There we go. I want this to be a little bit darker than everything else to give my values some pop. All right. Now, some of the other things I usually tend to do when doing Aquaman stuff. I usually try and make sure that my background doesn't kill off my foreground. So one of the things I will often do is one of my personally favorite filters. You may find use out of it. So I'm thinking maybe it's best for me to make a note of that. So what I do is I duplicate the layer that I did the background on, and then I do kind of a simplifying filter. So I'm gonna do artistic cutout. I want to zoom out so that I can see the effect. But as you can see, basically cutout is going to reduce it to maximum of 8 different tones. And you can actually, sometimes you get better results with even less. And considering I duplicated it, I take the duplicated layer and just kind of reduce its opacity a little bit so that I get some of the informations true and but not all. All right. And yeah, from this point on, the work itself is just doing the rendering properly, doing every bit of illumination the way it's supposed to be done. This from there on is finished work. But the point of this video isn't for me to make a finished painting. The point of this video is for me to demonstrate a technique. So with that in mind, I think we're gonna be wrapping it up. you know, might actually finish this at some point, but today is not gonna be that day because, well, like I said, not the point of the video. Thank you all for watching. There will be more of these tutorials, I guess. So, if you find anything useful from them, feel free to help yourself. Feel free to integrate these techniques into your own workflow. Try not to overuse them. Try not to use them as a crutch. These techniques are best used when you actually know what you're doing. So they are a speed up kind of solutions to, to a deadline crunch. They're a great solution for somebody who's, doing concept artwork where you're not necessarily trying to create high art, you're trying to create effective things at a fast pace. Also, it works for comics, it works for a lot of stuff like that. There will be, I think, quite a few more of these videos through which I'm gonna guide you through a lot of my processes, a lot of my also kind of my thinking processes also, because I think they're important as well to kind of explain to you where I'm coming from in these things. Uh, but most importantly, do not rely on my videos alone for anything ever. Internet is big, YouTube is huge. There's a shit ton of videos out there. Help yourself. People are sharing the knowledge. All you need to do is just kind of go there, look at it, pick it up. And best of luck in all the creative endeavors. That's gonna be it for today. Thank you for watching.